Happy fall, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Collegiate Exclusive, this time in partnership with College Esports News. We're bringing it back for another semester of talking roster moves at the very beginning of a brand new Collegiate Rocket League season. So first of all, thank you to CEN for having myself and TJ back for another roster discussion, because this could get lengthy. So I'm glad they didn't get tired of us last time, TJ, because we have a lot of teams to talk about.
Yeah, buckle up. We've got even more roster mania in certain aspects this season than we did last season. We continue to shatter records. We continue to welcome different pipelines into the collegiate scene, and I cannot wait to see how they intertwine this season.
I was counting it up, and we've got like 50-ish rosters to talk about that are either significant because of performances in the last couple of semesters, or teams we think are going to be really good going into the fall. And there are about 40 different teams out of the 50 that made roster changes, whether it's transfers or graduates or just bringing in new talented freshmen. So because we have so many roster moves to talk about, I think we start with the teams that are actually staying consistent, get them out of the way first, because no one's actually here for the teams that stayed the same. They want to hear about the roster changes, TJ. So I feel like we start with them. If you want to break it down from the very top, I think we talk Winthrop first.
I mean, absolutely. CRL, Garrett G, and Percy, three of some of the most consistent players in North America, period. Not to mention specifically in CRL, this team has prided themselves on consistency at the highest level. They don't miss touches. They don't miss plays. They don't miss shots. Now, granted, can T-Corral, can Garrett, can Percy hit a double flip reset? Can they go triple over your forehead? Yes, but they don't need to do it as much as some of these other teams. So Winthrop, absolutely no reason to change. Full North American team, which is a very rare occurrence at the top of CRL right now. So as of Captain America and Garrett G's bloodline in CRL, love to see it staying the same.
I hope we get eventually more RLCS guys of the same stature as Garrett coming into the scene, because they're trickling in right now and finding a good amount of success too. I mean, Kronovi and Garrett were the two big names coming from RLCS last season. And then they spent a year in the system playing lands like DreamHack. That's why we're starting with Winthrop, because we most recently saw them a couple of months ago at DreamHack Atlanta winning that land. So they closed the season on a high note, despite only placing fourth place in the actual CRL Spring Championship. But they're staying consistent. They've got a lot of time under their belts together now. So this roster is one that you'll obviously be keeping an eye on. I expect there'll be another fall championship contender. Another roster staying the same: Baylor, Andy Hoxer, and Zanil. These guys under the tutelage and esports mind of Coach Adam Stanley. They'll be playing a lot in kind of your PEC kind of regional league. It's more of like a side league right now, but it is a growing national conference, not of the scale of NECC and NACE, but still definitely one to keep an eye on. They added West Virginia this year to their lineup. So a lot of good teams playing Rocket League in the PEC, but it was Baylor's league last season, and I expect it to be probably their league again, depending on how good West Virginia looks. But the fact that they're staying consistent, TJ, says a lot about how much these guys are committed to a school like Baylor.
Yeah, well, and it definitely won't be easy. If I was under Adam Stanley's wing, I'd stay at Baylor too.
Yeah.
I would not leave by any means. So completely understandable that they're going to stay at their program. Again, going down that list of consistent rosters, Maryville, huge contending face that's staying within CRL. Talking about Speed, Wave, and Arju. Now, of all the Europeans that come over, this full European team with Shuffleverse behind them coaching, this is a rare one, because you have players who have been so ultra consistent and so fundamentally sound, like Relating Wave, like Speed. But also, Arju is a player who I would argue is the best in CRL right now, period. Now, granted, that could change this year. We've got some new faces coming in, but mechanically, mentally, and with the championship pedigree, Arju, I think, is the player to beat right now. Maryville, the team to beat.
It is kind of crazy that with all of the new blood, young and up and coming players that have been joining CRL the last several semesters, we still have a team like Maryville on top that features a duo from RLCS. What was that, season 7 or 8, when Speed and Arju played together on Mouse before they were even just Mouse? Like, that's how long ago those guys were playing at the top of the RLCS. And then Relating Wave had his breakout that next RLCS season. And now they've brought all of that experience playing on RLCS RLCS lands, grinding through European RLCS now to CRL, where they are very clearly the best team right now. I think even with all of the additions, Maryville should have a full stake to the throne of CRL. They won in the spring, and I don't see any reason why they shouldn't be at least playing in the championship match come the fall semester. But a couple other rosters that aren't quite in the same tier as your Maryvilles, your Baylors, and your Winthrops in terms of sticking together, but are retaining the same roster. Oklahoma Christian, we're going to start with them, TJ. I don't know if you heard, but they are probably not playing CRL this semester, just as a result of Chili's work schedule, I do believe. He just doesn't have availability when CRL's being played. So we're going to be missing a little bit of the Eagles, unfortunately, from Oklahoma this semester.
Well, I mean, of all the players who have come over to America and really just became Americans, I mean, Chili is almost word for word that type of guy. Chili is one of the most relaxed, one of the calmest guys in CRL. Somebody who's not afraid to travel to lands either, which I can always appreciate with some of these, big signings, big teams. Now, granted, Oklahoma Christian has always been the dark horse in many, many predictions. They've always been top 10. They've always been top 12, top 20 at their worst day. They've always been right outside the cusp of whatever these cutoffs normally are. And they also did get their first land win as a team last season. So I'm glad that if it is the end of this team's run because of Chili's work schedule, I'm really happy that they got their land win together, a big land win as well. But also it does really suck that the Chili can't get a day or two off to try and qual and then go from there. So, wishing them the best. But a team that I know ain't working is Syracuse because I know they are 110, 120 past 2 down right now. Gababy, Tiz, and Lesser, Big Russell. Obviously this team, when I talk about dark horses, they are, I think, the ultimate dark horse because on paper, you're not looking at a rank X player outside of Gababy, and even Gababy is a more recent rank X player, a more recent pro. And all of a sudden you get a player like Tiz who has grinded his butt off this season in RLCS and in CRL, has had some huge wins. Not to mention Syracuse reverse swept a team like Northwood in the Play versus College League finals this past spring. This team has passion. They like to call themselves Passion U. I think they've lived up to that title most times. I would argue 9.5 times out of 10 they live up to it. And I'm very excited to see potentially another CRL run from them.
And they'll be powering up because once the cold season hits in Syracuse, they will have nothing to do other than stay inside and play more video games and maybe go to class. We're not sure with those guys sometimes. But Syracuse returning their roster. Kennesaw State also returning their roster. Cronovi, TNT, and Flitz. Maybe just for the fall semester. I was talking to Crow about this about a month ago now, and they're not sure how much time Flitz has left in his collegiate career, but they're at least here for the fall. So Kennesaw State's it's still the same old trio. I think going to be another staple of the top 25.
Yeah, I mean, Flitz with an absurd North American LCQ run as well. So we know that the skill level is there, and they've shown it. I mean, we're talking about a team who competed at lands like DreamHack this year and a few select others, but they have looked good in their showings. But the same issue that we talk about with this Kennesaw roster, me as a Georgia-born native, it's the same issue as always. They don't grind enough. They don't scrim enough. They don't compete in enough. And so at the end of the day, we get to see them at their fullest, really, for maybe 1 land in April, maybe 2 lands in March and April, and that's about it we get to see from them. So a team like Kennesaw, I'm really, really looking to see if this is Flitz's last semester. I would love to see a little bit more dedication because they absolutely can make CRL. There's also some huge lands this year with some huge prize pools. They are absolutely capable of making those as well, but I got to see them actually get on the game.
Yeah, hopefully they'll get the hours up. Those guys, unfortunately, just as a result of their being on the older side of CRL, just don't seem to have the time sometimes to stay grinding as a trio, which is unfortunate, but way it goes sometimes in the scene. But let's finally talk about roster moves because we have a few teams that, because the CRL season is starting so early, I think registration closes on August 19th for the first open qualifier for CRL, which is before some schools, a lot of schools actually, are doing their tryouts for their Rocket League team. We have some Potential roster moves. Akron, after having the best A-B team duo last semester, had some graduation, so I think everyone's going to concentrate on the A team this semester. Milio, Patty, and Bullseye are confirmed to be playing on that Akron Blue starting lineup, and 5UP is a bit up in the air right now. Milio was telling me that they're not sure where 5UP's going to be fitting into the roster this semester, which is one of those moves, TJ, that I expect kind of gets cemented in the next couple of weeks. We're just talking roster moves at the very start of August.
If it's anything to go off of, last season, 5UP basically only played in Collegiate Rocket League games and Collegiate Rocket League qualifiers. Outside of that, didn't see him in any LANs, didn't see him in many other tournaments, didn't even see him compete in many of like the NACE matches, even like the more important games for a school like Akron. But at the end of the day, this is a roster move that we've talked about on the podcast thousands of times. 5UP has to start, and 5UP has to play on this roster for Akron to be a true contender. Not to say anything about Milio, Patty, and Bullseye. That's the Bluegrass Boost Battle champions multiple times for a reason. But 5UP changes that roster entirely if he gets to play because of his experience. You know, him and Flitz have similar high-level experience as of the most recent period, as the last few months in 2026. And the fact that he doesn't play in a lot, you know, it really, really stinks for Collegiate Rocket League as a whole. Would love to see a player of his skill level play in more. And I hope Akron can convince him to do so this season. But kind of going also through that into another ESC roster that is not making a roster move, but has a new-ish roster. Let's talk about Ball State. You got your tried and true duo in Oath and Guh, who have been the most dependable duo, one of the most dependable duos in Collegiate Rocket League. And then their new recruit, now coming up on their sophomore season, Thebes, who had an incredible showing. We're talking about a Ball State team that went upset after upset after upset and are your NACE defending champions. This team looked disgusting in that tournament, and they could absolutely do it again this fall.
Yeah, and they were just shy of qualifying to the spring championship as well. They lost to Fisher in 5. And I mean, Fisher made that run through the last chance qualifier into second place in the spring championship. So if Ball State returns this starting lineup, which it is likely that they do, they're another one of those schools that hasn't had tryouts yet. I think their tryouts is like midweek between the first qualifier, and the second qualifier. So they're probably returning that same lineup unless somebody really pops off in their tryouts and is given a shot for the second qual if they don't make it to league play in the first one, because I think Ball State is the deepest program in CRL coming into this semester, at least on paper, because I mean, Oath, Guh, and Thebes are clear potential starters on the A team, but I could see any one of their 4 B team players maybe sniping a spot in the middle of the season, maybe start of the season if they're looking fresh, because Ball State, they're returning Yags, who is a great Rocket League mind, solid B team player as well last semester, but they're adding a bunch of freshmen too. Fish and Yeti, both. Fish, someone that you and I have seen a lot of in the Alabama high school Rocket League scene. He's a like 12-time state champion, yes, and has made several deep runs in national championships, the high school level. Yeti and Toast as well, 2 standout players that make me wonder who the B team lineup is going to be, because they could be a top 20 CRL team.
I mean, Toast was the most recent name to be added to that list as well, and Ball State by far are the deepest program. Now, granted, did we lose a lot of B teams this year? Absolutely, but will BK still tell you they're the deepest program in the nation, and will we back them up? Absolutely. Yeah. Now, with this B team specifically, I've met both Fish many times in person, like you have as well, Bepic, but also I met Yeti in person at CECC this year. These kids, and all 6 or 7 actually players now for Ball State, they are some of the most down-to-earth, nicest kids, and BK really prides himself on the character and the region of these players. This is all NA for Ball State, and Ball State's been very consistent about only recruiting from North America, recruiting out of high school into the college pipeline, and you've got to commend BK in this program for still keeping that pipeline alive in an age where we're getting international transfers in who could potentially be taking some of those spots from high schoolers, right? Now, granted, winning however you can win, that's the name of the game, but Ball State finding ways to do it with North American high school prospects turned into college standards, that's very, very exciting. But also, I agree, I don't have any idea what that B team roster is going to look like. If I had to put money on it, I think Yags, Fish, and Yeti are a very, very good assumption right right now.
Yeah.
But also Toast is a player that I don't know too much about. So who knows yet? It'd be very exciting to see. And their tryouts actually are not happening officially until after CRL qualifiers start up. So no idea who the stand-in roster is going to be for that B team.
Worth stressing, because I think one of the biggest talking points coming into the fall semester is how early these qualifiers are happening. That's why we're doing this video so early when we aren't even really close to the fall season. But that's what we roll with in the CRL landscape. It's what everyone's rolling with. So it means we've got a lot of insane roster announcements in like July, and Concord has to be one of the biggest ones, TJ, adding Rezi, who has a lot of experience already playing with Crispy over in EU. But I mean, Concord on paper has got to be right there with Northwood, we'll talk about next, in terms of pure mechanical output. This team is going to be electrifying to watch if their internet's working this semester.
Well, I mean, hey, they are in the middle of West Virginia, so maybe don't cross your fingers just yet. For Concord, they have been angling for a full Rank X, full European move. They've been working on this ever since Crispy and CMOS got involved. Those are players I'm lucky to call close friends, and they are all super motivated. They've all been very competitive. We're talking about CMOS representing his country in all the Esports Nations events. Shout out Lithuania. And then you've got a player like Crispy, who not only for the EWC LCQ, but also in the EU LCQ made very impressive, very deep runs. And Rezi's got a decent resume to match that as well. And Helix, after getting a CRL national championship to their name in fall 2024, I think now getting to step back during their senior year, going to be very relaxing. Will be an assistant coach alongside Johnny Boy, who's Concord's marketing director, and of course, very storied head coach now with their Rocket League team. This team has got all of the keys. They've got all the mental backing. They've got all the program backing. It's literally just the internet. We're going to see them travel. We're absolutely going to see them compete, and they are absolutely going to be a contender this year.
I hope for everyone's sake over at Concord that they find some working Ethernet ports, because they were one of the biggest what ifs of the spring semester. But Concord's been at the top for so long, we can forgive them for taking a kind of semester off. But Northwood, let's move on to them. I mean, these are two of the biggest ticket roster moves of imports coming into the fall. Northwood adds a pair of Brazilians, one of which that is going to be playing at the RLCS World Championship next month. Mata and Drufinho will join Drewy and Creams to make a four-man lineup at Northwood, which this one kind of came out of nowhere. I mean, Royales was the first Brazilian to come into the top of CRL. And now we've got two more high-profile players joining Northwood of all schools. And I had heard that Northwood's team this fall might be kind of up in the air. And here they pull out maybe the biggest set of roster moves for the entire semester.
I mean, I think they had been working to get those two signed in writing, I think all the way through May.
I believe
so
it.
Not surprising that it took this long to get them signed on. And Royales has made a lot of public comments on this. We've made a lot of public comments on this. The South American to CRL pipeline is now very alive, and it is very active. Not to mention that if you want to throw a very big asterisk or collegiate technicality, Drufinho is the first CRL player to make it to Worlds. It's like while being at a college, while competing in college. Now, granted, hasn't played his first game yet for Northwood, so do with that information what you will. But you can watch Drufinho very soon on the world's best stage, as well as he'll be right back and trying to compete in Collegiate Rocket League. Now, granted, it's huge that they still keep Creams and Drewy, because there is a lot of pro events coming down the pipeline for the next month or two, which means that there is a world where maybe you have Mata and Drufinho where they're playing in some of these bigger events, they get very busy. But the moment that we get through the RLCS season the next month, and then we settle into the fall, this team, when they get CRL as their main source of gameplay, I am very excited to see how they do. We're definitely going to see them at some LANs this year. I think the Great Lakes Gaming Convention is going to be probably the biggest showcase event for them. That's a prize pool that's right under 10K. Very excited to see, I say right under, like 7K-ish. Very excited to see how they contend there in their home state, about 5 minutes from their campus as well. So this roster is going to be heating up right at the perfect time. Just don't be surprised if it takes until that maybe mid-September window to where they really start heating up.
I mean, they'll have league play to be grinding through. But good news is with RLCS Worlds being in North America, is they have a 4-man lineup, so it should be okay when Drafinho's playing. But also probably won't miss out on scrim time if they do choose to be playing with Drafinho then. But I'm wondering how the Brazilians are going to feel going up from Brazil to Michigan of all states to join Northwood. That is going to be a culture shock and a half, DJ.
Yeah, I mean, at least Reales went from Brazil to Boston.
That's true.
I think it's more of a casual, like, yeah, Boston's a great city. Fisher's right there in the center of it. Why not? But yeah, I agree with you. I think right in the middle of Michigan, shout out Michigan. Yeah. To any Michigan-based viewers, we apologize, but it's definitely a little different than the move to Boston. So I'm sure that, again, give them time to get adjusted, but even at their worst day, right off rip, they're going to make league play without a problem. They're going to be a top 4 team. They might lose one awkward game in those first maybe 3 to 4 CRL matches, but outside of that, I don't see them struggling, and then they're gonna still hit their peak. It's just a matter of when they play Maryville in CRL League play. When do they play a team like Baylor? When do they play those higher level teams? That's what I'd be more worried about if I was Big Ryan over there, Big Slew, trying to run that team right now. Now, speaking of teams again that we expect to contend at the top, also 4-man rosters. This one's got a little bit more of a conversation behind it. Let's talk about West Virginia. Gyro, Matter, Cosmic, now adding Devo, which I believe is one of the most exciting prospects you could have added to your team. Not to mention, out of all the North Americans, Devo is 18, so obviously getting out of high school, and is one of the most exciting prospects in professional Rocket League, period, right now. So West Virginia adding Devo is a huge move, but here's the negative of that. Now you've got a very, very competitive 4-man roster where, in terms of RLCS experience, you've got players like Gyro, Cosmic, and Devo. But in terms of just being a glue guy and being the most, I think of Helix almost for Matter, where Matter might not have this huge resume, still has a great resume, but Matter has been the catalyst for this team's offense, has been the main player to get things moving, especially with players like Gyro and Cosmic. Matter has been the wild card and then some for this team. So I'm not sure where they go. I'm not sure what the move is here, but it is a little confusing that they kept all 4. I know Matter was potentially transferring at one point this past semester. They kept all 4, and now someone's got to sit out. I don't know how you choose.
I think it was graduation that was going to take Matter away from the starting lineup, but he's going back now for grad school. I believe that's what we were told in our first episode. I think sometimes on our show, we learn just as much from Twitch chat as they learn from us. So we got a scoop there, but that was the last second ad for sure. We thought he was gone. So I am curious. And do you know if Angel is still coaching at West Virginia? Because you don't hear much about coaches coming and going in the CRL space, but whoever is in charge of that WVU lineup is kind of going to have their hands full, because I don't know who you start in a lineup of Gyro, Matter, Devo, and Cosmic, because you've got a lot of mechanical ability, you've got a lot of experience. I feel like it has to be between Matter and Cosmic fighting for that last spot, but I genuinely don't know.
I think that's a safe bet. I think for this specific episode, I think that's almost 100%. I think Devo and Gyro should absolutely be guaranteed. But again, man, it is hard to judge between the other two. And also, Angel is only 24, so Angel could still be doing grad. That's very, very possible. It's just a matter of what type of grad program they might be doing. So no idea if Angel's still there or not. But West Virginia, even if Angel is there and or not there, I'm sure he's going to be helping in some sort of part-time capacity, especially for a decision like this. I'm very, very intrigued to see what happens here. But a roster that is definitely a little more set in stone, a little easier for us to predict. Let's talk about Cumberland. They've been angling for a big addition to this team. Now, ever since they got Naya, Cumberland had kind of revived themselves a little bit. And then you get a player like Hotshot last season, who, again, a player with a decent resume, but not the same resume as Polar, for example, but then comes in and is the catalyst, is a huge factor. Seeing both Hotshot and Naya come alive through lands, not on lands, through lands. We watched these two come out of their shell and watch them become absurdly social and very personable and extremely marketable for this Cumberland program. They will get in your face. They will scream. They will talk their trash. This team is so much fun to watch. And now you add Kazi. Cumberland all of a sudden jumped from a team that's kind of always been struggling in the 8 to 12 range. I think with this Kazi move, if they play their cards right, they, Coach End of You plays their cards right, I think as a system team, they could go and contend with your Akrons. They can go and contend with your Ball States. They can go and contend with maybe even some of your Winthrop on a bad day, Baylor on a bad day, and maybe even a team like a Concord early season, depending on how it goes. I don't know. But the sky's the limit for them because they've added another rank X banger player in Kazi.
I think Cumberland has quickly become the prime landing spot for players that all they want to do is grind and be the best version of their competitive selves. And I think Hotshot was the poster child of that last semester, being a B team player that gets the call up and makes the most of his opportunity, because Cumberland are not shy about being probably like the most gritty program in the space. Like Coach Claypool takes esports as seriously as an SEC football coach takes football seriously. They do team workouts. They do summer workouts. They are constantly together as a team. When they're not performing up to their standards, Coach Claypool gets pissed off and he expects his players to do the exact same thing. And so I think anyone like a Polar that just wants to win and will do anything that it takes to win and lead a team to victory, Cumberland's the place to go. And if Kazi is down for that sort of program's character, then he's going to fit in very well with this lineup. And I'm excited to see the highs that they do reach this semester. But I was just checking Twitter to see if Angel was still the coach of West Virginia, TJ, and I saw Cumberland actually just announced one of their new academy players, 2200 peak Vade, will be joining Hotshot, Zora, and Og in some form or fashion on that academy roster. I mean, do you know anything about Vade? He's kind of coming onto my radar from out of nowhere, but I think he really makes that Cumberland Academy team scary.
I mean, I actually just saw the post as well. And one thing I will say is that if you guys get your own time, go look at some of these players' photos that they submit for these roster announcements. I mean, Vade just straight up submitted. He's like in his living room or his bedroom, and it's just a selfie of him in a hoodie. So anyways, I'm sure Vade is incredible. And Cumberland needed a player like that to let build under this very, very deep program all of a sudden, because Hotshot is a senior. You've got Og and Zora, who are now in their master's programs and are also newer signees as well. Zora has not played his first game for Cumberland. Actually, I guess technically did in the Southeastern Esports League summer games. But these are players who are now going to get their first full semester as Cumberland players. And then again, you get a player like Hotshot, who I would argue is now a varsity tested talent, a varsity tested leader, and will captain this team. And having a player like Vade as maybe a secret weapon, a card up the sleeve, if you will, very, very excited for that. And again, Hotshot's a senior, so not sure what's next for him there. So big for Cumberland. I think that it's going to be a very, very interesting battle between Ball State Black and Cumberland Academy, because those are the only two major B teams really left standing right now. Granted, we'll get to Indiana Tech in a second and we'll talk about that B team, but I think as of right now today, you're going to look at Cumberland Academy and Ball State Black as your B teams who will have an academy off, if you will. But on that note, I think now we can go ahead and get to Indiana Tech, returning the same duo that they brought in originally with Velocity and Reshiram. But now you get a player like Alex, that is ALXX. For those of you who might not know, one of the two Europeans who came over to some of these top 16, top 20 teams, who changes that program. But we talked about this a lot in the podcast, Bepic. It moves the needle, but I don't know how much yet.
I'm not too familiar with Alex, but I mean, you've got the European connection now fully apparent on that Indiana Tech starting lineup. And it's one of those signings that could elevate them, could keep them the same, because Bluey became an instrument of a lot of danger on that Indiana Tech team. He was clutch on land towards the end of the season. When you talk about Oklahoma Christian and their performance at Tri-City Slam, it was Indiana Tech that they had to quell in the championship, who had just upset Concord in Game 7 overtime, which, if there are any of you that really love electrifying land matches, go watch Concord versus Indiana Tech semifinal at the Tri-City Slam. Game 7 OT that goes like 5 or 6 minutes. It was the game of the CRL season last semester, and Bluey was the hero of that. So Alex has some decently big shoes to fill, but I know he's got some pre-existing chem, I believe, with Velocity and Reshi. So Indiana Tech are really excited about this signing. Coach Somber he gave me a whole like write-up on the Indiana Tech roster move. So I know they are stoked to have Alex this semester. And Bluey jumping down to the B team, but I think this Indiana Tech B team, like you kind of prefaced, TJ, could be contending with Cumberland Academy and Ball State's B squad as well. Bluey, Perry, and Silk are the trio. I think that's like a rank B plus B team roster from what I remember. So Bluey's veteran leadership on that team with a couple of fresh faces to the Indiana Tech program, I think they're going to be one of the deeper squads this semester as well.
Yeah, when Indiana Tech building for the future, just like Cumberland is right now. Nothing wrong with that. And I'm intrigued to see how those teams develop throughout the school year. One more thing I'm going to add about Indiana Tech before we move on very quickly is Alex does have a decent pedigree. Alex is Romanian, and in the Nations Cup regional qualifiers, went top 16, lost to Poland in Game 4. In the Europe LCQ for Worlds, placed top 48. In the 1v1 Open, top 22. In the 2v2 Open, top 32. So this is a player who is definitely more dominant as a ones main. So that right there is a good sign. Now, granted, is Somber the most confident coach of all time in CRL? Absolutely. And will Somber tell you that Indiana Tech are going to be a top 5 team in the nation? Absolutely. And do I love that from their coach? Yes. But again, with that resume, it's incredible. But you have to compare it to the resumes of the rest of the top 8. So Indiana Tech, when you're looking to pick an early dark horse for league play, not for quals, but for league play, I think Indiana Tech are a safe bet. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be free, especially if the players can either A, get over here in NA in time, or B, if they have to play from EU. If that's a team that has to play in EU, then things get scary. Then things get awkward. But if they're in NA, I love their chances. But again, we're talking about a dark horse for league play. They got a lot to do before they upset Maryville again, like Bluey could with this team in this past league play. But on that note, now we'll keep moving down to another transfer who is in a similar boat of trying to kind of gauge these results and see how they're going to fit. Let's talk about Ole Miss. They not only get Lunar back once again, but now you pair Lunar with Barrist and TMS. Now, Barrist has plenty of CRL experience, plenty of RLCS experience. We've talked about Barrist a lot on this show, but Bepic, TMS is a player that I am absurdly hyped about. Hyped about. We're talking about somebody who, A, is Italian. Now, why would that matter? Why would that be something special? Because they're playing with Hyder, playing with players like Cookser, playing with players like Arju. And TMS and all these Italian players seem to have some level of just absurd mechanics, almost like the French players, really, where they just have these absurd mechanics. We're also talking about a player who is already qualified for the Esports Nations Cup. Yes, both Arju and TMS will be at the Nations Cup in November of this year. Cool. They are world-renowned and are very, very talented. TMS as well also went all the way to round 5 in the Swiss and the Europe LCQ. Unfortunately, did lose. But has really, really impressive performances. Top 12 in the 2v2 Open, and again, top 22 in the Europe LCQ. And again, Italy as a team has been uber impressive in the Nations Cup and the Nations League. They've been so impressive. Also, in the 2026 RLCS season alone, a top 8 where they lost to KC, to Carmine Corp. A top 16 where they go and they lose in Game 4. A top 28, a top 12. That's just from the last 4 Opens. This is a player who is absolutely going to change this program. And I already told Barris this personally, and we talked about it on the podcast. If Barris will just get off of League of Legends, I feel like this team should be a guarantee to make league play. I think they are truly going to be a guaranteed team to make league play, but they've got to get over here to North America because they're in the same boat as Indiana Tech. If your players are playing from Europe, it's going to get really scary.
Let's hope they get over here because that's a team that needs to be in league play. We need more Italians at the very top of CRL again. But I mean, similar vein to Ole Miss pulling roster moves out of nowhere. I mean, Royales going to Fisher last season was the biggest move of the semester. And throughout the year, he just kept building and building and building that roster up. And Fisher, the reason why they're so low on our list of teams to talk about is because their roster isn't set yet. I just saw on the CRL registration page, Royales is in the lineup for Fisher. I know that was kind of up in the air maybe for a second there, but he's returning to Fisher. Justice is locked in as well over at Fisher, but I don't know who the third's going to be, TJ. So Fisher's kind of one of those wait and see sort of teams. I don't know if you want to dive into them because I feel like we'll be talking a lot about them on the podcast this semester once their roster is cemented.
Yeah, I don't think we have to dive in too much. I think Fisher has a big chip on their shoulder because Royales decided to go to Fisher over teams that we thought were going to be a sure lock. We thought that Baylor roster was going to be Andy Hoxer and Royales for the longest time. And then that completely flipped. Many schools thought Shawnee State's in that pool as well. Many schools thought that they had Royales, and then Fisher came in and made things happen for them. And again, up in Boston, I know Royales is happy up there. Yep. So, now Royales is not only kind of made this Fisher program relevant once again in CRL, but Royales has also changed the branding of Fisher. We talk about Fisher in a very, very positive light because of Royales, who's probably the most positive person in all of Collegiate Rocket League. It's just a joy to be around. Now, granted, Fisher and roster moves, there's big question marks there, not only because we don't know who the third is, but also Justice as well was there before Royales and then was gone for a semester, then came back and joined Royales this past semester. Yep. And again, I get back to that chip on your shoulder point because Fisher finished second place in CECC, in NACE, in CRL. Like, this is a roster who should, and I know Royales will argue, could have been 3-time, 4-time champions in all the big leagues in Collegiate Rocket League. I know Royales is still very upset about those losses, and I would be too. I'd be grinding. I'd have that printed on the wall of the Fisher Esports lab of all the second places. So I hope that is a major third for them. I hope it's a big rank X signing, whether it's North American or European, because that is all this team needs. They were one step away with the roster that they already had. They just need one solid player and it changes everything. But as we've talked about, the scene and the landscape have changed quite a bit. So excited to see what happens with them, but we can keep moving down the list.
All right, let's talk Boise then, because this is another one of those youngsters that's joined a starting lineup that's been together for a long time. Durtho finally leaves the Boise State program he's been a part of for what feels like a decade. So Mystical is the newest addition to Boise State. And along with Woozy and Preston, I mean, I don't know if this is a team that we'll see in the fall championship quite yet, but they're definitely another one of those contenders that we're going to see duking it out in like game fives in the lower bracket of the last chance qualifier.
It's also the perks of signing a North American team because, hey, if CRL wants to schedule early, this is a team that absolutely could grab some games on a few 100 ping, 150 ping, 130 ping European players. This is a roster that is 1000% capable of grabbing a league play spot. And last season, they were actually in Hawaii during the CRL quals. So now we get a Boise roster where for the first time in what feels like almost 2 years, we'll get a fair chance to compete. Now, granted, I say fair with an asterisk because, again, Europeans will be playing from Europe most likely.
Yeah.
So fair to whoever you might be a fan of, I guess. For Boise, I also think Mystical is a great signing. Getting a young student of the game who has been impressive since day one, who has won many high school events, who's competed in many Stay Plugged In tournaments, and has been a key player in those tournaments. Now, granted, Boise also said Mystical is the #1 high schooler coming out of this signing of this recruiting class. Because this is a very big CEN episode and CEP episode, I have to clarify that I think Devo might have that title if we're talking about North American high schoolers, but Mystical is absolutely top 2, top 3, top 4 in that conversation. So will Mystical move the needle for Boise State? Yes, absolutely. But also, do I miss Dirtho a lot? Already, yes, absolutely. But I have no doubt that Doc Haskell and the team are going to figure things out. And again, if the bracket moves their way, they could slide into CRL.
I think they definitely should be a league play team at minimum. That's what the expectation should be right now, but we'll see what happens when that first open qualifier rolls around, how everybody's looking coming out of the summer. But Lubbock Christian, let's move on to them. They were a program that were kind of the butt of a lot of jokes the last year or so when they were not realizing any sort of potential of their last couple of lineups. They added Beastie last semester, who was supposed to be a big European name joining their lineups, and they really didn't do much. But now they've upgraded again, adding Mercy, who's a product of the United States high school esports system. And so Mercy's got a lot of experience playing in national championship events at the high school level, and he's joining Process and Beastie in that LCU starting lineup. And I'm going to rattle off the B team lineup too. Not quite as notable, but still some pretty big names: Schmack, Snapalicious, and Nasirium, 2/3 of former starters of Lubbock Christian. But I mean, TJ, that A team, I'm hoping, I've said this the last couple of semesters, LCU actually realizes their potential, because again, they're one of those teams that's going to be around the Ole Misses and the Boises that we're talking about as kind of the second tier of CRL.
This right here is probably the best LCU that we've seen. And the reason why I say that is because even though that Process and Schmack are now split apart, which feels criminal to see them on 2 different teams after they've been together for so many years. With Beastie specifically, we talked a lot about this last year. Beastie's got a great RLCS resume. Mercy, again, out of all the young prospects, the young students of the game to get involved in Collegiate Rocket League, Mercy is 19 and is already qualified for the Esports Nations Cup as well, with a roster that has made some huge runs. That Puerto Rican roster is dangerous, and it's led by Noxes. There's familiar faces like Milio on that roster. This is a team that many had counted out or on the lower side of the North American qualifiers, and they have not only done it, they've done it against the world's best. And also on top of that, for a player like Mercy, top 22, again, losing in round 5 in the North American LCQ, top 22 in the NA Open, losing in round 5. This is somebody who is right there on the cusp of a major tournament win, on the cusp of a LAN win. And that's what Collegiate Rocket League is all about, where these players who in their pro careers are still doing really well, we're not signing the first killers and the Kofers. We're signing players who are in the top 32, the top 22, and are almost using CRL as a feeder league at this point for professional play. And Mercy is a player who stands absolutely everything to gain. And again, has already qualified for the Esports Nations Cup with a Puerto Rican roster that upset on their way to do such a thing. So it's very, very impressive player. And at 19, to have that level of composure, this is a roster where I think them and Boise are in the exact same boat. League play is the minimum for them. But I think I'm leaning LCU a little bit more for now in terms of who I would predict, because again, you have Mercy and BC who have incredible RLCS resumes, and Process has always been a dark horse type of player in CRL and always performs when it's needed and has been an offensive weapon many times for LCU in the past. So I'm very, very excited about LCU, and that B team roster is going to be fun to watch as well. Now, however, once we start moving down to some of these other roster moves, there are teams who I don't know if you would argue take a step back or forward just yet, but Davenport losing Cam is a huge talking point. It is a step back, unfortunately.
Well, they're returning Brock and Bolte at the very least to the starting lineup, and that third spot is going to be a former B team player that gets the call up, exiled or para. I was talking to Brock about this. They're not sure who it's going to be quite yet, but Davenport, unfortunately, might be slipping a little bit unless we see a guy like exiled or para really step up and take this opportunity and make the most of it, because this lineup could be a league play team, but right now as it stands, I think they're one of those squads that's going to be on the outside looking in of the top 16 unless they are really ready to go and take advantage of some teams that aren't in this first qualifier. But I mean, similar vein, Bruton Parker could be one of those squads because they haven't really changed. They've changed their lineup again for like the fourth straight semester, but it's Manny filling in Antix's spot, I think, for the second time alongside Milk and Cass. So Bruton Parker continue to shake things up. Obviously, they're a deep program, so these guys have chemistry together already. I'm not worried about them slipping, honestly, but it's a matter of, does this move allow these teams to make a step forward? Because for Davenport, for Bruton Parker as well, and for Michigan State, who are adding Mafino to a four-man lineup of Knockmore, and Opbom. I mean, do these moves make them CRL league play teams? And as it stands right now, I'm not sure it does for Davenport or Bruton Parker. Michigan State, I think, could, if Mafino is a real grinder under the tutelage of Jimmer, make that step forward. But these are teams that, if you want an underdog to cheer for, these are your options.
I think as well with these three teams, they are teams who you need to see on land for them to get big performances.
Good point.
I think all of these players like Brock and Bolte on land, very loud, very, very active. Manny and Cass the exact same way. Absurdly active on land. Michigan State as well. More of you very, very loud, very, very active on land. Not afraid to take that traditional sports background and throw it into gameplay. But this is the negative of the current way these teams move, is that due to kind of their own funding and their decision making with the program heads, you'll see Bruton Parker at plenty of lands. You will see them compete. But however, Davenport, we might only get to see one time at CECC, maybe, because of the the GLGC, I believe, is their league. Or sorry, is it the GLE?
GLEC.
That's what it is. Yes. Too many dang alphabet soup leagues. The GLEC. So we'll probably see them at one land this year, unless they get invited to like a boost on the beach or something like that. Yeah. But with this roster, I don't know if they do, because of the roster taking a step back. They're going to need some big performances to do something like that. And then for Michigan State, we only will see them probably at a Michigan State ran land. That's how it was last year. They got to compete in a few select Northeastern events, but nothing huge, nothing major. Now, granted, the Future Play $50,000 tournament is in Indiana. Very, very doable for Michigan State to make that event because of how it's divided, 4-year schools, 2-year schools, HBCUs. Michigan State in that 4-year category could make something happen. But outside of that, I agree. I don't see them making it to CRL unless, again, they get European team on 200 ping after another European team 200 ping. Then things could get awkward. But I don't see them more than top 24 in my eyes right now. But a roster that I think their ceiling, even though we don't know what it is, I think can be higher. We'll talk about Shawnee State. They've been looking for a new third for so long. Big shout out to Spooky. Don't get me wrong. Very, very kind guy. Very, very well-versed guy in the scene. But also is not a high SSL, low SSL type of player. Where now you get Slayer, Taco Stash, and it's Indicator who's coming in now. And Indicator, again, a player with a decent resume, not a resume as storied as some of the other ones that we've talked about so far on this broadcast. And again, Indicator has great RLCS placements, but doesn't have an RLCS page. So isn't a player that you see consistently in the top 32 or in the big standings in the 1v1 opens, 2v2 opens, but is a very, very high level player who still changes this roster. And Slayer, a very, very experienced coach. So I would imagine that Slayer as a player coach, once again, will get to tune this team and fine tune it to a very, very competitive degree. But again, I don't know if they make CRL. I think it's more likely than some of the other three rosters. I'm
just glad to see Shawnee State competitive again, because I think after the Royales sweepstakes, Shawnee State was the team that lost the most because they were kind of banking on Royales being their third last year. And so Spooky stepped up and the results weren't there, but at least Shawnee State was circling around some of these land qualifiers, getting to make appearances on a few lands. I think they were at BBB last year as well. But
yes,
now they are fully back in the running for top 32 at minimum. So I'm excited to watch Shawnee State play again. And no matter what, there's always been the Shawnee State way. They will be annoying for top teams to play against. That they will retain that thorn in the side play style that Slayer has championed. And Columbia College as well. I like grouping teams that I view kind of similarly. I think they're going to be an annoying team to play against no matter who you are. And their third's not set yet. They were the former school of Kazi, who's now at Cumberland, and I was talking to Gusky and Rhyolite about who their third's going to be. Not quite sure yet. It's not locked in, not announced, so I don't know what's going to be happening with Columbia College, but they were a top 25 team that stayed there the entire semester for the most part with Kazi, and were an annoying squad to play. So more question marks there with Columbia. TJ, I don't know if you've got any opinions on them, since it's the same duo we know and love, and a mystery third player.
Well, this is a roster that, again, you need to see on LAN. Their best performances of the season were on LAN, again, up in the Northeast. Or for CECC, they had some really, really talented performances at that event. And Gusky and Rhyolite looked incredible. Rhyolite's looked incredible their whole collegiate career. And after finding a home in Columbia College, I hope that their third is, I'll throw out rank B+, rank A. I think B+ is an absolute minimum for them, but I prefer a rank A player. Or if you get another Kazi level type of player, I mean, my gosh, look at what Skippy's done with Matt Aloysius, right? So that's what I would love to see, as a player of that pedigree, that top 32 range in North America and or EU, but who knows yet. Now, you will probably notice that there is a roster that has been a staple of CRL that we have not talked about yet, and it's for good reason. So now let's finally talk about St. Clair. With one of the bigger moves of the entire season, they add JNaps as head coach, which is huge, because JNaps has a lot of big involvement with a lot of big teams that I don't think I'm allowed to publicly talk about yet. I don't want to leak anything. But JNaps is somebody who has had a illustrious pro career, and is, the way things I'm hearing, are probably going to have an illustrious coaching career in RLCS and from a world standpoint as well. But in terms of the roster, that's where things get a little questionable. Sai returning again is huge, very, very talented player. But then Fabso and Jazzy, still very talented players, but more so players that were getting that B team experience or that lower CRL experience than Sai was, excuse me, in the RLCS landscape. But a very, very competitive team still. But again, CRL has gotten so much better, and St. Clair hasn't made a move.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what happens with this team. And that's the reason why they are so low on the list, despite having a duo that are CRL national champions back when RG was on the roster last year. I think they'll still be good, but it's a question of how well they can integrate Fabzo into the roster and what JNaps is going to do with this team. I think this is a squad that I want to have low expectations for going into fall, and they surprise me rather than expect them to be in a similar spot where they were, I think, a game or two off in the last chance qualifier of making that spring championship. And that was with Vesh as well as a third. So for St. Clair, I'm going to start slow with them and build up, but they've got a great foundation to build on. And this is going to be a great project for JNaps to take the reins of. So St. Clair still repping Canadian Rocket League very, very well. I think they'll be all right, but will they make the final 8 left standing at the end of the fall? That's a really big question at the moment. And we've kind of left the realm of the teams that we think are going to be a series or two off from that top 8, because now we're getting into like our Wichita States, who may return the same lineup of Aquexo, Boone, and Knight. You know, good talent there, but not really going to be a team that's running deep into the last chance qualifier if they make it there. Etona State, kind of same boat, could be a last chance qualifier team that makes a deep run. They showed a lot of good form on LAN, especially towards the end of spring. Sulla, Smooth, and Geo all returning again for this DSC lineup. And WCTC2, TJ, I think these are teams we view similarly, returning a lineup of 3 guys that looked very good at the end of spring, Ty, Neeks, and Dimitri for WCTC, but can they translate that now into another big step forward and be an LCQ threat in CRL?
They're absolutely land teams as well. These programs are not afraid to throw money at their programs and let these players travel. That is where all of their big news came from. Daytona State had a wonderful DreamHack run. Both teams were at ETSU for that land, the Tri-City Slam. They played incredible there. Now, however, there is a slight asterisk on a team like WCTC because based on my internal sources, Dimitri is actually not going to be at 100% capacity with this team this fall. That is news to you, I believe. Yeah. That's on me. But from what I've understood over the past week or so of playing Battlefield, one of those players,
hands-on journalism.
Yes, I love my job. Yeah, I've learned that Dimitri is probably not going to be at 100% capacity until the spring. Now, granted, WCTC do have a new third that they have been trialing with. I'm going to try and do some live journalism now.
Okay, we can come back to him if you need some time.
I got it. I got it. His name is Virus. That is the player's name. So I'm very intrigued to see kind of how that player blends in. And apparently he's actually pretty good, according to my internal source. So we will see what happens, but probably no Dimitri until the spring.
I love our podcast's live reporting, like actually pretty good thanks to the unknown source. But I do believe you. I mean, we're pretty tied into the scene at this point. Like you said, playing Battlefield with the players. Yeah.
Yeah, it's, shout out Battlefield.
And they were right about Dimitri too. I mean, Ty was hyping him up to me going into the start of spring last year, and Dimitri lived up to the hype. WCTC were right there in terms of competitiveness. So if they're saying the same thing about Virus, then I have reasons to trust WCTC there. But we gotta make the last several rosters here a bit of a sprint, because we've, in typical Collegiate Exclusive Podcast fashion, even though this is a partnered segment with College Esports News, we have gone over time and taken way too long to talk through things, but that's what we do. So even in the partner segments, we keep it consistent. But Conestoga returning their trio of 80 Cyber and Poke. They had a great announcement video on their social. I'd recommend going and watching it. And then ETSU, bit up in the air right now, should be returning the same trio of Adrift, Kasai, and Leo. They're all signed up on the CRL page at the moment, but from what I've heard, my internal sources, is they may struggle to field that entire lineup for the entire semester. And we'll report on this more as the story develops on the podcast. So we'll put a pin in ETSU. But Kaiser, big time team to keep an eye on that I probably assume no one's heard of quite yet. They were a decent top 48 team last year, really, with Denzi, Zinvez, and Prism. But K-Frost and Turbo, the former King University duo that was tearing through Summer Series a couple of years ago, they are going to Kaiser as a duo, playing alongside Denzi, and they smoked the competition in the Gaming Oasis Summer League, which was, I think, the only summer competition for teams in the collegiate landscape. So Kaiser is going to be a team that is going to come out of nowhere for a lot of people. And so if you're listening to this right now, you can tell everyone once they make that first deep run in the open qualifiers of CRL that you were here first, because this team is going to be very fun to watch.
Especially in lands like the Battle for Florida and or the Southeastern Esports League, that is a team to very, very much keep your eye on. Now, granted, next team, is it Olivia? Is it Olivet?
Is that what it is? I think is what it is. Yeah, they're in Michigan.
I haven't got to talk about them much yet on the podcast yet, so I had to make sure I get that right. This is a team that has signed up for both major lands this year, as long as signing up for CRL with this roster. Fuge, who has been in CRL through Siena Heights a little bit. Hezi, a huge addition in terms of underrated dogs on RLCS in North America, and Silu as well, a very, very underrated rank grinder who we've seen kind of throughout the scene every now and then. So this is a roster that, when you look at your top 48, potentially on their best day, when you look at the top 32, this roster's got big potential. I'm very, very excited to see what they can do.
Well, they will be playing on my stream at some point. So depending on when this goes out, you can view it as a VOD, view it live, whenever you like. But we should be getting some tape on them. So I'm excited to see them play. But running through the next several teams, because these are squads that'll be on probably the outside of the top 32, trying to jump up into the power rankings. George Mason's roster isn't set yet. They haven't done tryouts. They don't know who's going to be returning quite yet. So they're very much up in the air. Leslie lost Collat to Man Manchester. So it's just Swaz and Dre at the moment. Don't know who their third's going to be. Carthage lost Vale. They're still doing tryouts. So X-Ray and Corrupt will be returning as a duo, but they're looking to replace Vale. Fanshawe, who were a breakout squad with Reeker and McLean last semester, are adding Stitch to their lineup, who I don't know a ton about, but Fanshawe is one of those sleeper rosters too. Mount Aloysius, same deal with Skippy in that lineup. They, however, have lost Pig B, who's no longer competing in CRL. So B team player Sammy Jammers is stepping up to join that starting lineup. And then UNC Charlotte, same trio of Lazy Knight and Balla that we've seen for like the last million years. South Carolina losing Og. They're looking to replace him with a B team player, maybe new freshman coming in. Florida Southern losing K Frost, B team player stepping up. Any of these teams you want to talk about, TJ? Because I think a lot of these are just kind of wait and see what they actually are for fall.
This right here is the NECC Division II, kind of like banger playoffs type of rosters. The only roster I think that's worth talking about, because Leslie and Carthage are still waiting to make roster decisions, Matt Aloysius and Sammy Jammers. Sammy had actually a very impressive performance on LAN at CECC. However, we're talking about a player who I believe is rank B, potentially rank C right now, and is more like an 1800 on this lineup. So unfortunately not Pig B. So Matt Aloysius, especially in leagues like the Northeastern Esports League, they're going to contend there, but they're going to struggle with some of those teams. I mean, think about how Akron's going to do in a league like that. And then also for Fanshawe, they're in the same boat. They're going to be NECC Division II Demons. I do think that they could grab upsets on a team like, I'll throw this out right now. I think they can grab upsets on a team like a Daytona State. I think they can grab upsets on a team like an ETSU even in these qualifiers. So keep an eye on them. But I you know, the sky's the limit, but the floor is also the limit for them, unfortunately. Based on what we've seen. And Stitch doesn't change that too much for them, in my opinion. Outside of that, UTD, Dalton, T-Saban, Calculated, there's a lot of rosters under that as well that we can talk about. I think Manchester's worth talking about. You know, Kalat, Hydro, and Thankful, that's a roster that you look to compete at a B plus A level. Those are players with decent RLCS, top 64, top 72, whatever the number is down there. They got decent experience. And outside of that, I don't think there's much else left to talk about. But a lot of unconfirmed roster spots, a lot of unconfirmed thirds, excuse me. And again, rosters like George Mason and Albright, who just don't have any confirmed players right now. Look to George Mason, who have had a very good track record of recruiting high-level talent. They just don't have one right now. So I'll have to wait and see. And a lot of question marks for a lot of rosters still. But outside of that, that's all that I got to add.
Yeah, I think the limited knowledge we have on some of these lower level teams at the moment is just a product of CRL starting super early this semester. So make sure you're ready. And honestly, if you watched any portion of this video, I think you're already well equipped for the CRL Open qualifiers coming up in I think August. Was it 21st is the first one? Yeah, I should have the day. 23rd is the first one. And then the week after that, or the weekend after that, I should say. So hopefully you're ready for CRL beginning very soon, because this fall semester is going to go by like a flash. I think the championships are late October, so we don't even get CRL November and December action. So thank you for watching. Me and TJ breaking down as much as we could of the CRL fall semester coming up, of course, in collaboration with College Esports News. So make sure you follow them. Make sure you follow the Collegiate Exclusive Podcast too. We're on Spotify, YouTube, on my own channel, Mr. Bepic, and we post frequently-ish on Twitter about goings-ons in the CRL scene. So give us a follow too. Follow DJ TJRL, Bepic Casts, and most importantly, just support Collegiate Esports in general, especially Collegiate Rocket League, but Collegiate Esports in general. But of course, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next podcast episode or article, depending on where we see you. Take care.